Okay. This is Ruth Broder. I am conducting an oral history interview with Emery Klein at the Jewish Federation of Metropolitan Detroit building on June 29th, 2004. Emery, do we have permission to use your words and thoughts in the future for educational and historical research and documentation?
You do.
Thank you. All right, let's start at the beginning. Where were you born and what year?
I was born in 1928 in Humenne, which is a small town in eastern Slovakia.
Czechoslovakia.
Humenne, the uniqueness of Humenne was that it was very much Jewish flavored. There were a total of 6,000 people, and of which 2,000 were Jewish. The shopkeepers, the doctors, the lawyers, the pharmacists were all Jewish. We had 3 synagogues, two, one Orthodox, one conservative, and believe it or not, even though it was a small town, we had the Reform Temple.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know. Talk
Life,
a little bit about your childhood and your family. Pull it
I'm
all
coming.
together. Okay.
Life was very, very good for us. My parents were well-to-do. My father and his brother owned several businesses jointly, and we had a very, very wonderful childhood. We went to, beside regular school, we went to Jewish schools, and we had many, many friends. Our family, aunts and uncles, cousins, every Friday night got together at our place because my grandmother lived with us. My parents were, as I said, well off, but also very charitable. They always make sure that members of our extended family who possibly didn't have as much as we did were well taken care of. We always had 2 tzedakah boxes in our home, one for the poor and one for, we used to call it KKL, Keren Kayemet for Israel.
Say that again. Call it what?
One was for the poor,
Right.
and the second box was for KKL, Keren Kayemet LaIsrael, the Jewish National Fund. My father never came home Friday night from shul. We started bringing 1, 2, or sometimes 3 people who didn't have where to go for a Shabbos dinner. This was something what my mother expected, and it happened on a regular weekly basis. Czechoslovakia on those days was a wonderful democratic country, probably as good or second after Switzerland. But unfortunately, things got gradually worse in the late 30s. Czechoslovakia separated from the Czech Republic. There were laws introduced almost on a daily basis restricting our lives as Jews. We weren't able to go out after it got dark. We were forced to wear a yellow armband. Synagogues were closed. We couldn't go to school. And as I say, there were daily announcements about new restrictions and new laws. Things got even worse when it came to 1942, when they started with the transports. First it was young boys, men, then young girls, and in 1943, all families were taken away.
Is that when you...
We were spared at this point yet, because among other businesses, my father owned farmland, and he was experienced in managing land and property. So I was appointed as a manager of the Jewish farms, and this kept us home yet for another few months. Later on, as the front was coming closer, the Russians were pushing forward. The Germans and the Slovaks, who were under their influence, wanted to make sure that the area is Judenfrei, because they obviously couldn't rely on Jews, possibly spies. But again, fortunately, they felt that they could use still my father, and they transferred us to a Jewish farm in western Slovakia. And we managed to be there for a while. We had a horrible experience there. I don't know if you want me to mention it there.
Go ahead.
Is that okay?
It's up to you.
A cousin of mine with two young girls we were hiding them at our place. And after a while, things got to a point where we all felt it's getting a little dangerous. And she had Aryan papers, so she went to the station with the intentions of go further west. Unfortunately, somebody recognized her, and they took her off the train. And she and about 30 other Jewish people were taken to a forest, executed there on the spot, and buried. This was the closest when I became the tragedy which hit our own family.
Who else was in your family besides your mother, your father? You haven't mentioned siblings.
I didn't. I should have. I had a brother, Bernie, who was 20 months younger than I am, and my sister, Judy, who was 5 years younger. And that time, naturally, we were all together, and we also had an aunt who was widowed, who was the wife of my uncle, who was a partner to my father all his life.
Was your grandmother with you still at this point?
My grandmother died
Okay.
before we were taken away. But in September 1944, our luck ran out, and we were taken at that time to camp. We were put in on trucks, taken to a nearby gathering camp, and from there with cattle cars into Auschwitz-Birkenau.
With your family, Emery, or separated?
Yeah, all of them.
All together?
All 5 of us together. There, we were separated, men from women. Fortunately for us, there were a couple Jewish boys from Humenne who were working for the Germans, because Germans are very smart. In order to keep as many people on the front, they use Jewish people for doing all kind of jobs for them. And these 2 young fellows told Bernie and me, Bernie was 15 and I was 16, that we should tell them, A, that we are at least 18 years old, and B, that we have a trade, which helped a lot. My sister at that time was 11 years old, and when they asked my mother, you want to be with your daughter? Naturally, like any Jewish mother, said yes.
They asked if she wanted to be with the doll?
Yeah, if she wants to go separately or with the so naturally, they both, as we found out after, ended up in a crematorium the same day.
The day of the separation, that was the last day you saw
That
them?
was the last day we saw my mother and my sister.
Okay.
We got into the camp, and I know how much you want me to be detailed, because as I
Keep
mentioned
going.
to you, the stories at the Holocaust Memorial Center and Spielberg Shoah has it.
Tell us something about
But
it.
there was the routine which you might have heard. We had to undress. We shaved from top to bottom, showered, which we later found out we were lucky that because water came out from the shower rather than gas, which most people went through. And we were handed out at one place a pair of trousers, one place a jacket. Again, a little side story. The slacks, pants which I got were very short, so my father but opened the cuff to lengthen it, and lucky to us found a gold coin. And believe it or not, and also because these are slacks which somebody else had. And this gold coin helped us to buy bread the 3 weeks we were in Birkenau. He gave it to a Lagel Eltester, who gave us a slice or 2 slices of bread every day for this, which could mean life or death.
You're right.
As we all know, Auschwitz-Birkenau were death camps, okay? There were crematorium, and there was strictly extermination camps. But fortunately, we were shipped to a work camp in Gleiwitz.
In Poland also? Was that in Poland
yeah,
also?
Yes, Upper Silesia. Before leaving, we were tattooed on our left arm. My father got number 13660. I got 61. My brother was 62. And the cousin with us wanted to be with us registered as a Klein of 63. This was very important because we now were registered. We at least existed.
Mm-hmm.
And in the camp, again, a little side story. My father had enough guts to stop Dr. Mengele, who visited different camps, and ask him to put his younger son to the kitchen.
Into the kitchen?
To the kitchen. Mengele was so flabbergasted that stopped that besides giving him a slap in the face, he brought Bernie into the kitchen, which again extended our lives because Bernie was able to steal some food, and every night he brought it to us. My dad and I were assigned to night shift, so which meant that we worked at night and didn't sleep during the day because they didn't let you. We were supposed to, but every few minutes, every couple hours, so there was appeals, just to really try to make it as difficult for you as possible. But again, here my father, we were assigned to a factory which was repairing railroad cars which came back damaged from the front. I was given a soldering iron, which I had no idea what it was, but my father spoke to the foreman, who was a Polish, very nice guy, and he promised him the world. He said he's a rich man, and when he gets home.
Oh my, yeah.
He will take care of him as he should take care of his son. So we were there for almost 6 months when the Russians were pushing forward and the Nazis started to flee. And they decided to take the Jews with us, and this was the well-known famous death march where we were marching, and most, if I know, 80% saw people killed and died during the march because it was very exhausting. One night we stopped in a place called Blackhammer, where when we woke up in the morning, the Germans were gone.
Were gone?
They were gone. They just needed to go faster because the Russians were pushing and had no time to take care of us. So they literally left us. We couldn't believe it, but we were left in the camp. So we all broke into warehouses, hungry, and trying to get food. And we ate the food, which we were not, our stomach were not used to. Diarrhea broke out, and it was horrible smell, and situation was just very, very bad. So my father, brother, myself, and 3 of our cousins decided to start our journey home by foot towards Czechoslovakia. And I mean, I could take a long time to do it. We just had a general idea where to go, but we were walking every day, stopped and slept over in abandoned Polish homes, made ourselves what food was available, and continued our journey for many days. At one point, there was a train going our direction. We waited in the train for 6 hours till it finally moved and took us a little further. Eventually, we ran into the Russian army, who were friendly and not so friendly. They said that if they called us Jews, you were working for the Germans, and they were not very happy they worked for the Germans. Go explain to them we didn't do it because we wanted to. And later on, we ran into the Czechoslovakian army, And a Czechoslovakian army truck took us back to Humenne, back to our hometown, which was February 1945. Excuse me. We moved back to our old home
Which was intact?
in Humenne.
Hadn't been
Yes, our
destroyed?
servants, my father, I forgot to mention that we had a household, 2 maids, a driver, and several servants, 2 of them living in our home. And my brother, who was in charge of the household, had a Christmas tree for them every year.
Yeah.
And so we came back, and our servants were in the home, and they turned the home back to us, and we literally moved back in. We had one cousin who was hiding in the forest who was back, but it was very sad and very difficult. There were no friends. They were, with the exception of this one cousin, no family.
How many people that were taken out of your town came back to the
There were
town?
from the 2,000 people, maybe, at that point, maybe 40, 50, maybe less even, but eventually a few more came back, but not more than 100 total.
It's amazing.
My father tried immediately to somehow make a living. He bought an old truck, and he went out of town to bring food, all kind of grocery products which we sold, and trying to make a living. I was very weak and undernourished, and my father took me to Prague to see a doctor, a specialist, who diagnosed me with, I had lung TB on my right lung, and I had TB spondylitis, which is TB of my back. I was sent or taken to the Tatra Mountains and I was 6 months in a cast in a TB sanatorium. After recuperated from this, I entered the commercial academy. We had a commercial academy in town, trying to get my degree.
You were college age by then?
Yeah. And
Emery, wait,
I
go
was
back a
also
minute.
accepted.
You hadn't finished high school,
No.
but you went
But
into college.
we had tutors who,
Yeah.
for example, my parents hired a tutor to prepare me for the bar mitzvah in 1941.
Yeah.
And I had a very quiet, low-key bar mitzvah in our home. My brother, who was 20 months younger, never had his bar mitzvah anymore.
Oh, okay.
While going to school, and I finished eventually my stint at the commercial academy, anti-Semitism was all over. When we went out for breaks to class, there was nothing unusual, fight on the blackboard, Jews get out. And things were just, we very soon realized that this is not a place for Jews to stay. And even though my family lived in Humenne all their lives for generations, not for them, for generations, we saw that there would be a need to leave the country. My father, who had a sister in Detroit, and my stepmother, because my father remarried, wanted to go to the United States. I failed to mention that in this interim, we were visited by Israeli Shaliach, and who appointed my brother and myself to be in charge of this Zionist organization called Hashomer Hatzair.
Did they want you, were they trying to urge you to come to Israel at that point?
For this intention to go to Israel.
Yeah.
But first to organize the 15, 20 kids who were there in the city and around. And, we have tried our best and went to summer camps, and the idea was to get ready for the Aliyah. The instructions were that my brother and I will be the last people to leave the city after everybody else. We help everybody else to get out. And there were all kind of stories which I could, there was a girl who had no papers whatsoever. I managed to get her papers of a friend of mine who didn't come back. And on these papers, she was able to get a I go to Israel.
She went to Israel.
Yeah.
But you didn't go to Israel.
Not yet, not yet. But I started, that's where I was actually. My father, who has a sister in Detroit, wanted to go to Detroit. My brother and I wanted to go to Israel. And, you know, we were listening to BBC, to the news, and watching the partition of the United Nations, and 1948, the birth of Israel, and it meant an awful lot to us, and we were very much encouraged by it. So we had a big family discussion, and my father said, "We'll go wherever you want to go." He said, "Promise that we'll never separate."
Mm-hmm.
We'll give it our best try in Israel. But if it doesn't work, you have to promise that we'll all go as a family to the United States, which we did. So we went to Israel. In the preparation for it, I took a course in operating movie projectors. They said this is good. My father bought a chicken incubator because they said that's important. So we came to Israel, and through the to the help of a cousin of ours who made Aliyah many years ago, we were assigned an Arab home in a desolated Arab village outside of Quarata, a home without plumbing, without electricity, schlepping waters by the pails. We were also assigned some farmland, so we were trying to work the incubator, get some chickens. We found out you have to keep kerosene lights at night to fool the chickens so they produce more eggs. And we planted corn. The chickens were dying. And I, as a businessman, put the corn on the trucks to go to Haifa to sell it, found out there's an abundance of corn and there were no buyers. So anyways, things were not easy in those days in Israel. And after a while, and we tried all kinds of, my father still had a little bit of money, and so he was given all kind of proposition, among others also my movie house. So I thought I'll be able to use my expertise, but the deals were not really very good deals. And my father sat down with us. I think so we tried everything. We have to go. And we agreed we'll go with him. However, the Czechoslovakian quota was very low, and we soon found out we cannot go to the United States. So my aunt in Detroit made arrangements for us to go temporarily to Montreal, to Canada. We got an 8-day transit visa, Italian transit visa, to come to Rome, go to the consulate, pick up our visa, and go to Canada. Just to find out that the Canadian consul was a horrible anti-Semite who have literally refused to give visas to anybody who came from Israel. So instead of 8 days, we spent 8 months in Rome. And only on the intervention again with my aunt here, went as high as Mackenzie King, who was the former Prime Minister of Canada, till the consulate finally got a telegram, whom I saw because I came every day at consulate and made friends, issue visa to Klein family with no question asked. So
you went to Montreal, and that was 1950, huh?
In 1949, 1950.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right. We came to Montreal and tried to make the best of it. First week, I got a job as a bookkeeper. It's the Kukuses, it's the Kukus family, Michigan Boulder Nut. As a bookkeeper, later I became controller and eventually vice president. The Kukuses, Bell and Harold, were very nice.
They lived here, but they had a business there.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was in Montreal first.
You've got to get,
I'm
okay.
sorry. Let me back up. I jumped.
Yeah, what did you do in Montreal?
I was working as a bookkeeper for a local company, also became controller, and did well, considerable, but on my father's urging, we left and we came to Detroit. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Right.
No, keep going. That's okay.
In Montreal also, I must tell you, my boss was an ardent Zionist, so happened Etar, which is the opposite of Auschwitz. And we went to meetings and we tried to contribute as much as we could under circumstances, but we're always interested in what's happening in Israel. And we came to Detroit, and here again tried to make a living. The very first week, as I said, I had an ad in the paper. I was told that we got positions, what were seeking jobs, and I got a job with the Caucasus at Michigan Bolton. I had to unpack my suitcase and I started to work, and eventually became controller, vice president, and became very close with the Caucasus. Bill and Harold were wonderful and had a good relationship. At 10 years, we sold Harold, and Elwood was his brother and owned the company with him, sold the company. And my brother and I said, it's time for us to go to business for ourselves. My brother wasn't very happy with his job. And because we had some contacts in the import-export business, we started an import-export company, later specialized in electronics. I put in $250, my brother $250, and had that old Underwood typewriter in my father's basement. And worked very hard and succeeded 30 years later. When we sold the company, it was a well-established AAA1 rated worldwide electronic firm with offices in Troy, Hong Kong, Taiwan, and warehouses in Budapest. But we felt time is coming because we worked very, very hard. And at that time, I already had a bypass surgery and so on. So, and we sold out. And now let me retract a little bit back.
Yeah, well, I'm going to take you back.
In 1967, I was fortunate to meet and marry my wonderful wife, Diane. And in 1969, we had Jeff. And in 1970, Barbie came along.
Let me go back a minute.
Okay.
Bernie, did your father come to Detroit with you and Bernie?
He came actually before us.
Did Bernie get married in Montreal?
In Montreal.
Or he got married. All right.
in
I just wanted,
Montreal.
but
I
the
got married.
family ended up
But
all here.
Every year, this was my father's request, and we had her to the promise we made.
To stay together.
Right.
Okay.
So
All
life
right.
was good. Our business was prospering, and with the encouragement of Diane, we felt that it's time for us to give back to the community.
That's where I want to take you next. First of all, your earliest recollections of community work here,
All right, I
and
will-
what people influenced
Okay,
you and mentored you in this
Okay.
community.
Diane got immediately involved with Hadassah because her mother was very much involved, and in Federation. My first contact with Federation was through Mercantile Division. And why? Because in my business, I was selling to retailers. And Bob Billings of Schifrin Billings took me to the first Mercantile meeting where I met Saul, Irving Kahn, Sid Friedland, and many others. And believe it or not, within I don't know how many years, I became the chairman of the Mercantile Division.
I'm not surprised.
During the same period.
Okay.
But
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
during the same period, somewhere, I don't know what year it was, and I'd met Sheila Orden. Sheila Orden, who was in the Women's League or what have you, was in charge of a project called CANS, K-A-N-S, I mean C-A-N-S,
Yes.
CANS Against Needless Starvation, which was a grassroots organization collecting foods, primarily cans, which didn't spoil, and delivering it to the needy Jews. I remember Dan and I, with our 2 toddlers, going on Sunday mornings for deliveries. And one of our first deliveries was to a widow who lived in a garage in the inner city. And I tell you, this affected us.
Take some water.
How are we doing?
Keep going.
This affected us tremendously.
Keep going.
We just couldn't accept the fact that we live in an affluent community. And there's people who live in horrible, horrible conditions. Like I said, this one in the garage, others in horrible apartments without food, medical care, or anything. And we decided to do what we can to bring this to the attention of the organized community, which was Federation. So even though we did not know Bill Brunnen, we made a date with him, and then I went to see him downtown. And he referred us to Sam Lerner, who was the executive director of Jewish Family Service. We had several meetings with him, and he wanted to conduct a study because he didn't believe that there are Jewish people in the community. During this time, I got to know Bob Naftali, and we became good friends ever since. We asked Leonard to come with us for food delivery, but to no avail. Eventually, we pushed it to Edie Jackier, was the president of Jewish Family Service. And eventually, we got the program to be accepted. Not only the accepted, but Jewish Family Service became the top kind of program, the poverty program for Jewish Family Service. And Marvin Dage, who was the chairman of the nominating committee of Jewish Family Service, called me, and he says, told me that my name was proposed for the board, but also confidentially told me that Sam Lerner said over his dead body where Emery Klein get on the board.
Did you get on?
Needless to say, because I got on.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, Sam became my greatest fan. I was the only one whose calls he returned.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, he urged me to become the president of Jewish Family Service, which I didn't do because I had other involvements at that point. But this was Jewish Family Service. During this time, Bill Brunnen called me because he already heard of me and knew me, and asked me to serve on the board of Hebrew for Loan. And he explained to me that it's very important that now that I'm a member of the Federation, that the Jewish Hebrew for Loan is the oldest Jewish agency run by old-timers who are very zealously guarding their nipple and they were very antagonistic against Federation. So I did get on the board. I remember Henry Leopold talking about mentors. Henry Leopold was probably the youngest member and progressively thinking, and he urged me to help him to get the agency into the right tracks, that loans are more important than collect interest and things like this. Needless to say, again, I don't know how many years later I became the president. First, Henry became the president, later I became the president of Hebrew for Loan. And you know very well, Hebrew for Loan is today a very important agency of the Federation.
I have a personal interest.
Because your son is now the president.
My son is now the president, right. Yeah.
But Hebrew for Loan does wonderful work. As a matter of fact, okay, let me first continue to, now this got me deeper and deeper involved with Federation. And I think it was 1982 when I was very pleased to be appointed to the Board of Governors, later the Executive Committee. And in 1987, if my dates are correct, I became chairman of the co-chairman of Allied Jewish Campaign with my good friend Paul D. Borman.
Correct.
Unfortunately, I was able to do it only for a year because I had my first bypass surgery. During my tenure, I tried very hard to get the survivors to participate, to become supporters and so on. I only partially succeeded.
Why do you think that was, Emery?
What?
Do you have a feeling why survivors do not get involved in the campaign and give
they
money?
They were very worried about themselves making a living, and even though many made very good livings, it was just a matter of education. And eventually more and more survivors did participate, but it was a difficult breakthrough. And I devoted a lot of time to it, and as I say, partially I succeeded, not completely. Let me just come back. Eventually, I was involved in several different committees and chaired some, like the collection review committee with Marvin Goldman, whom I also admired very much. And Hebrew Loan was to me an organization which has the largest effect on me.
The biggest what?
Hebrew has the largest impact or influence on me.
Why?
Interviewing people every Sunday. Excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
People coming asking for loans for bare necessities, for health reasons, for be able to pay the dentist, to put kids through school, to have a bar mitzvah. There are many cases where the breadwinner got sick. Okay, I remember a case when the breadwinner got cancer. No money. And to me, this was very, very important. Again, we live in an affluent community, and for me to allow to have people in our community who don't have bare necessities. And I always recollected where I came from. And when I came to Montreal as an immigrant, where the highest helped us. And this was always, to me, very, very, I always saw it. You know, I was fighting and trying to do everything that Hebrew Loan got the allocations from Federation and had the money to help those who need.
Do you remember when you got the award, the International Association of Hebrew Free Loans in 2000?
My mother.
Do you remember what you said?
I really don't, but I would say that I said what I'm saying now, that Hebrew Loan to me had a tremendous impact on me because of seeing the people coming, asking for interest-free loans, reminded me of when I was an immigrant. I could never forget.
Right. You used the word greenhorn. You said, I remembered when I was a greenhorn. I read your speech. It was lovely.
All right, where were we?
Oh,
you were asking about mentoring. My situation was somewhat different. You have to remember, when I came to this country, I was almost 30, with a very strong Jewish upbringing and love for Israel. So I really needed, I didn't need mentoring per se. When I saw a need or a situation, I was, the kind of a guy who is, go for it and try to get involved with both my feet. In many cases, I ended up in charge of certain projects. Without no question that many people in the community I admired and I'm sure had the influence on me. One is David Hermelin, whom I loved and for what he was and what he did. And we did many projects together. I will never forget when Diane and I bought a large home And David came to see it before he even finished the deal. And he says, great, finally somebody in the community will be able to share some of the events, because in those days he had most of the events in his home.
Right, right.
I also remember a little incident with David. One Erev Yom Kippur morning, he called me, Emery, we have a very serious situation. There's somebody, and I won't mention the name, he told me, and his family will lose their home unless within the next 6 hours we raise $15,000. And this is back 16, 70 years ago, $15,000. You raise half and I raise half. And we did. This was David Herman. He had many situations like this. I used to tell David, I'm a partner to you in so many different things which cost me money. Take me in for a partner in something which I'll make $1.
Okay, you want to know something? I want to talk right now about your fundraising prowess,
Okay.
for which you are most famous in this community, and for which many people
You should have been
run to you
should
or
have
run
been last night at the Yad Ezra Carter location.
Yeah.
You know, ED and BAP.
Yeah, I know, I
Bartholomew.
know. Talk about the fundraising and,
Okay.
and how you come to it so naturally, and how you
Okay.
feel about asking people for money all the time.
I have no problem asking people for money because I start off with giving. And even though many times I ask for more than I give, but I feel, and very strongly so, and I know that I give the maximum pledge. And I always feel that I don't care who it is. If I open my books with my income and anybody else, I give at least as much. But what we call in the community a quality pledge. And I always start off, every fundraiser I do, the first name is on the mine, is a maximum pledge I can. But I have no problem, even though I may give $2,000, I'll ask somebody for 20. Because when I fundraise for something, I feel strongly about it. And I do much about fundraising naturally with people who I know, and I have lunches and breakfast with them and so on. But I have no problems even calling people whom I don't know and either invite them for lunch or on the phone, explain to them why I'm asking, what I'm asking. And somehow I've been successful in it since my mercantile division days of Hebrew Throne and so on. Yad Ezra, how did I get to Yad Ezra? Because of the CANS project led me into Yad Ezra, who again feeding, believe it or not, in our wealthy community, there's 1,100 families, 2,400 people who come every month for their bare necessities.
Did CANS become Yad Ezra?
No,
Does
no,
CANS
no.
still exist?
No, because Hebrew Free Loan, not Hebrew, Jewish Family Service took the project over, calling the Poverty Project, which they took care of all the people who needed help.
That didn't become Meals on Wheels either,
No,
though,
no.
then.
This was
This was separate.
This was called the Poverty Project, which became the flagship program for Jewish Family Service. Even though Leonard was fighting me on it, but eventually accepted it and realized how important it is. But I did fundraising, as I say, obviously for Federation, for Hebrew Free Loan, but then very soon I got involved politically. To me, political involvement is a question of survival. I remember times when Jewish people couldn't participate in the political process. And I hope this never happens again. I feel strongly that every citizen should not only vote, but be an active participant in their lives, in what happens. This is especially important for Jewish people, who are a minority in this country. And we have to make sure that we elect people to Congress, to Senate, who will protect our human rights, or civil liberties, and women's rights, to make sure that we appoint the right judges, and so on. And for us Jews who are concerned about Israel, that we elect officials who will be there for Israel. You have to remember that the American government gives more money to Israel than all Jewish organizations combined. And this is just one thing, besides financial support. Unfortunately, the way the world is today, United States is the only ally of Israel. And without United States, Israel couldn't exist. And they don't like us in Washington because we're good looks. We have to do our share, and I'm trying to do mine. And I'm involved in politics through AIPAC. And you know what AIPAC is. It's an Israeli lobby. It's one issue situation, but very important, and educating congressmen and senators about Israel and taking them to Israel and so on. And I'm on the National Executive Committee. Then MOPAC, it's a political action committee, which I started back almost 20 years ago with the help of David Hermelin and David Mundry for the purpose of helping Democratic candidates to get elected, candidates who are good on our issues, Israel number one and number two on our social and other humanitarian issues. I was always involved only in democratic politics because of my feelings, who I am and what I am. And we're doing this for more years than I care to remember, and I'm trying to get somebody to take over from me MOPAC, and hopefully Ira Mundry eventually will go in the footsteps of his father, who was my co-president. And this to me, Jewish continuity is obviously very, very important to me. And there can be only Jewish continuity if there's a strong Jewish community. And to have a strong Jewish community, we have to be activists. We cannot just sit back and criticize or complain. That's not the way I do business, not the way Diane does business. And we are doing our share the best we can in various different areas, politically very much so, and in the community as much as we can.
I think it's obvious that these roots of philanthropy are very deep inside of you if they started in Czechoslovakia
started back at home.
when you were a little boy.
Exactly.
And this is
That's
a
why
legacy you got from your father.
That's why I say mentoring is different for me than maybe other people.
Your father was your mentor.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Father, my mother, and this was just taken for granted. That's the way it to be.
Mm-hmm. This is what we do.
What did I leave out?
No, I'm not finished with you yet.
No, okay.
I want to talk a little bit more about federation and how you looked at federation as you first came here, as you said, as a greenhorn, and how you look at it today and the direction it's going in. Do you think it's going in the right direction? What do you think federation is concentrating on doing, and are they in the right place?
Ever since I joined Federation, I was not afraid to raise my voice. I was not afraid to criticize. Especially, I was very, very vocal when Federation wanted to buy a big building. I forgot where it was, for millions and millions of dollars before. As a matter of fact, I was called after when the Federation asked for my opinion, which was a very good deal, but first they wanted to spend a lot of money. And I was advocating many things over the years. Some of them I succeeded with, some of them were ignored, but there's no question Federation made a lot of progress. You say, how did it change from when I started?
When you started to where you think we are today?
We are fortunately devoting more time to more energy and efforts to Jewish education. And I said before, Jewish education leads to Jewish continuity, and it's very, very important. We are devoting a lot of time to endowments, and endowments are very important because that's the insurance for the future. We are more inclusive in federation than we were before. We were very elitist when I came. I was surprised that I was asked to serve on the board.
They saw
as
a good
green
thing
or-
when they saw it.
What?
They saw a good thing when they
Yeah.
saw it.
But today, for example, federation is more considerate on some of the other people, like there used to be non-Jewish food, non-kosher food served on some of the federation event, which was obviously offending the Orthodox community. So these things definitely changed and improved. Weaknesses, or unfortunately, we're losing a lot of people. We're still not reaching out to a good part of the community, and we need to do everything we can to do. We're obviously losing a lot of young people because people go to college and don't come back. We're losing people to retirement because people go south or wherever they go and they don't come back. And we need somehow to make sure that we fill the vacuum. And our pledges, while the total is there, but we have less and less pledges. We have much less pledges than before. And we need to do a reach out, and I was very glad on the last board meeting to hear that we're going to devote a special effort to the campaign to reach people who are so-called, what I called, and it's in a federation record, hidden, who are people don't know about and who are hiding or never came forward. So this is good, and I hope we'll continue this way, because the future is very important. I am now, fortunately, a grandfather, and having 2 grandsons and 2 granddaughters, and I feel very fortunate, but it's very important for the sake of all Jewish kids and grandchildren to have the federation here, the organized Jewish community, to assure a Jewish future.
Okay, Emery, I want to talk a little bit first about your trips to Israel, because you've gone, once you became a member of this community,
Yeah.
you've gone on missions with our community, and I
Correct,
want to know
correct.
what that meant to you when you went back there.
As you heard from my previous statements, we lived in Israel for approximately 6 months. It was not our desire to leave, but because to keep the family together, we decided to come here. But I really never lost contact with Israel and supported everything here with Federation and otherwise all the various different projects. We went on several missions. One mission we helped co-lead for Jane and Larry Sherman. It was a very emotional mission and meant a lot to Dan and me. Dan went several times also because of my health. I couldn't always participate. But every trip to Israel is a refresher. It adds to our desire of being and our life being Jewish and wanting to be Jewish. I was persecuted and suffered a lot because I was Jewish. I am Jewish. I lost my mother, my sister, and most of my extended family because I'm Jewish. But I never stopped loving being Jewish and love our heritage. And Israel is very important to me, and so is for Diane. I'm very fortunate in this regard, because Diane feels the same way as I do, and we try to instill this in our children.
Have you taken your children to
Yes.
Israel? Okay. You thinking about going on the family mission? Oh, your grandchildren are too young.
Not
Your
too young.
grandchildren are too
We
young.
took them to Europe twice. Once they were too young, and then when they both got married, when we told them we want to take them to a family trip, I couldn't believe it that they said, and they told them anywhere they want to go. They said they would want to go back to Humenne, to my old town, and they want to go to the concentration camps I was here. And it was quite the trip. And they got a lot out of it, and I was glad that they wanted to do it, and we did it. It was an experience which I'm sure they will never forget, or Diane and I will never forget.
You went back to Auschwitz?
Yes, yes.
Did you do that just with your family, or did you do that on a mission?
No, I did a mission too, but
So you went back, you've been back twice then?
Yeah. They wanted it.
Mm-hmm.
The first time they were too young, and to my surprise, they chose. There were little vacation time,
Yeah.
and they chose to go to Auschwitz. And
Okay.
we went through this and said Kaddish. It was a very emotional experience.
For you going back.
It was emotional for them too.
Yeah. Now, I know what you mean. This is the thing about the Holocaust and being in a camp that I have always wondered about, and I have visited Auschwitz twice now. And that is, I don't understand why you survived. Not you, meaning anybody.
You know
I
what?
don't know how
You know
you
what?
did it.
If you ask me, strictly luck. No smartness, nothing else. I tell you a couple small things which helped us. My brother being in kitchen, you won't believe it,
Mhm.
extra piece of bread. And number two, the gold coin which we found. Small little things like that, which helped us to extend our lives, to give us nourishment a little, because they were torturing us. There was no food. We were starving, literally. So things like this helped us.
How
we
big?
survived?
Yeah. How big is the desire to live and get through it? Is that
I
a
mean,
big part of it?
Absolutely, absolutely. We were there, and when the United States bombers flew over us, we were hoping that they were bombers. We were not afraid about us. We were hoping that they will destroy the camps. If it has to be including us, so be it. And we were very upset that they didn't. I never forgave Roosevelt for not doing anything. And he was a Democrat, but still.
It's a very interesting thing, Emery. Brewster's father never once voted for Roosevelt, and you know why? Said he wasn't good for the Jews.
He was not good for the Jews.
Yeah.
And
All right. It's all I have always wondered how
we
you
could spend
survived.
hours on it,
Yeah.
and
Well, and the Death March too. I
Yeah.
don't know how you physically survive a thing
It
like
was
this.
unbelievable, okay? And my father even schlepped one of my cousins who couldn't walk properly. He literally shoved him. And how we did, don't ask. We just the desire of wanting to live, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
And we went literally from hour to hour, from day to day. And the togetherness, to be together with my dad and my brother, helped a lot. My father, I could tell you another story. I got sick. I had a sore throat. My father said, "Why didn't you go to infirmary?" So I figured, that's all I need. They will kill me. But believe it or not, they thought I had diphtheria. And where they were killing healthy Jews, they took samples of my throat culture, sent it into the city, and came back. But a little story again, why I was in the infirmary. And I was feeling good. I was helping to sweep up, so I got an extra piece of bread. But at the same time, which if I wouldn't see it, I would not believe it, that the camp doctor came and marked certain chart with an X, which means that person never woke up in the morning. And seeing a son coming to visit his father, and was told his father is dead. So only question he had, where is his ration, where is the breakfast? That's how dehumanized people were. These are experiences which you could not forget.
Yeah, no, it's with you forever.
Yeah.
How long did it take you, when you came to this country, how long did it take you to talk about the Holocaust?
I was different from my brother. Many people can't talk. My brother couldn't. I felt very strongly that it's important for people to know. When I came to Montreal, I could not believe it, how little people knew. I made a lot of friends. There was a strong Jewish immigrant community in Montreal, and we joined an organization called the New World Club for young people as myself. I made many good friends, professionals and otherwise. and they knew so little of what happened. And I felt it's very important that they know. And I was ready to answer questions and talk right from the beginning. And I did it for Sidney Bokovsky, who interviewed my brother and me, and then again for the Shoah project at Spielberg. I felt it's important. So as difficult as it was, I felt I have to do it. And actually, my kids, as they were growing up, they asked questions. And
Did your kids ask you about it all the time?
Sure.
They didn't say we shouldn't talk about that?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And that's why I want them to see this also.
They'll see it. They'll see it. I think at this point, we should try to decide if there's anything else you think is vitally important that I have forgotten to ask you. I know that you have received several awards. We didn't talk about Bar Ilan. We didn't talk about Yeshiva Beth Yehuda.
Yeshiva Beth Yehuda, for example, the Federation led me to Yeshiva Beth Yehuda. Bill Labrunin, Avron Cohen, and Bob were very instrumental about me accepting the award, because I had no connection with yeshiva. They felt that I could be a good bridge between the Orthodox community and Federation. And according to Gary Torgov, I have accomplished that.
So that's good.
Yeah.
And Bar Ilan?
Bar Ilan is going back again. I always believed in education. And I never readily wanted to accept any honors and so on, but I was first the chairman of Bar Ilan dinner on the encouragement of Frida Stolman, whom I very much liked and admired, and Phil Stolman, and they had me for several lunches till they finally persuaded me that I should become, and I co-chaired the dinner with Bob Naftali, was my dear friend. And later on, Larry Jackier and Sharon Hart, and I don't know who else were very instrumental to talk me, and I should accept the award from Bar Ilan. And
what was your first remembrance? I'll go close to home here. What was your first contact and remembrance of your relationship with Carl Levin?
Oh.
As long as he's the Jewish senator from Michigan, we should talk about it.
Obviously, being involved in politics, I followed not only local but national races. I'm very involved in it. I can proudly say they have people in the Senate, in the Congress, I'm very close with, outside of Michigan, which helps because I don't need to use my influence, my business. I have no business. But when AIPAC calls me that there is an issue coming up in front of the Senate or Congress, and I should make calls, several people whom I can call home if needed, top leadership in Senate, and so on. So naturally, Carol was a natural for me, and so was Sandy. And I obviously supported both the races every time and all the time, very actively, and became close friends with Carol and with Sandy. And I'm proud to say that I was able to raise substantial amounts of money for them, which was always needed, like every candidate needs. And until this very day, we're close friends.
And you're able always to tell him when you think he's wrong.
Absolutely. And sometimes Sandy calls me, and before he finishes with me, I give him so much help that he forgot why he called me. And Carol knows that I'm right there, outspoken, and will tell him I'm not a yes person.
Yeah.
But again, he knows that when he asks me something, I'm there to do it.
Do you think that your background, coming from where you came and what you went through, is the most important reason that you have gone the direction you've gone to in our community and become as active as you've become?
I would say so, because I always look back and I cannot forget my past, and I want to make sure that our children or grandchildren never will go through what I went through. And there was always this conversation back and forward, can it ever happen here? And while I hope it can never happen, but we live in very dangerous times, and we have to do everything we can, that we fight terrorism, that we fight all this horrible, evil situation which we have, and anti-Semitism, I don't tell you, is on the growth in Europe and all over. And therefore, as I said before, we must have an organized Jewish community who is there to make sure that the rights are protected, that the democracy are protected, and many times even overlooking political parties, but we have to do what good for us as Jews and for our children and grandchildren. I'm many times very, very worried, and I'm an optimist, and
Yeah.
I hope that things will work well for all of us, that we overcome this horrible situation which is now prevailing in the world, not in